One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Fantastic.
Jazzed to be here.
Yeah.
I've got no complaints that I can think of.
Wow.
I mean, if we think hard enough, I'll I'll come up with some. But like off the top of my head, I'm easy.
I'm cool.
Yeah,
I got something for you.
I can't wait.
You're gonna love this. I was late to this record tonight for a multitude of reasons, but I'm trying. My concert is, well, it's the day after this will air. February 12th is the day
Right?
of my concert here in Toronto. And I'm desperately trying not to get sick. Everyone I see is sick. I've like barely left my place. I'm like just chugging vitamin C and zinc and all of the things, right? Like I'm just like I've got to do everything I can to try not to get sick. And I was like, I'm going to make a cup of tea. I'm going to make an herbal tea with some honey. That's where we're at.
Sure.
That's where we're at. I've been guzzling it down. And so I haven't used my kettle here in God knows how long, and it's clear. So you can see through it. And there was water in it. And I was like, I should rinse this out. Now I know there's a lot of people that say you don't need to wash a kettle. Or I've heard this. Like you don't need to soap inside a
Sure.
kettle because you're boiling the water in there, right? So in
Sure.
theory, it should be okay. But for some reason, I got it in my head that I was like, soap the kettle. Like I guess because I could see through it, I felt like, I don't know, like I was like, clean the kettle.
Mhm.
And this is a comment, and we don't work with these people. And by the way, what I'm about to say is also only partially a compliment. Method brand dish soap. I
Mhm.
guess I'm used to it back in LA
Okay.
because I don't feel like it sudses. And you know what? Let me caveat here. That could actually be the water. That could be the water. I was about to say the product was different in Canada and the States, and now I'm realizing no, 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 no. That could be the water. Anyway, long story short, I put a scotch of this dish soap in the kettle. And when
Mhm.
I tell you it took me 20 minutes to get that thing to stop sudsing, it was like every time you felt like there's no more suds, boy, oh, did some more suds pop up. Like I was like, this just feels like it. I felt like a prank.
Right.
It felt like a prank.
I have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
First off, nothing's cuter than you saying sudsing or sudses. Any sort of suds of any kind with any sort of ending to it. It also immediately took my brain back to last week where we openly said we're nanas now.
Yep.
I was like,
Yes.
that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Her her kettle for tea, herbal tea specifically,
Well, it's late.
was too sudsy, and I couldn't love that more. I got worried when you said you put soap in it, and I was like, if it didn't get rinsed out enough, she's getting the runs. Here we go. Because once you put soap in your body, that's just the natural reaction is you're gonna,
Is it?
I think so. You're just gonna like shit yourself for a
I've
while.
never well, I
I've
guess I
never
just don't feel like
consumed,
I've never ingested soap.
neither have I. And I don't know where I got this from. I don't know why mentally that's where because I'll say this isn't the first time I've thought this. Every time I wash my kids' water bottles, when I go to before I put it on like the rack to dry, I will make sure it rinses until there are no more sudsing because my brain tells me you don't want to give them the runs. And I don't know why that's the go-to. There might not be a correlation there. My brain might have created the correlation. I don't know. Um, but also my question, and this is just a genuine health and science question.
Please.
What does zinc do?
I I have no clue. I
Fair
have
enough.
no idea.
Fair
All I
enough.
know is that during like peak COVID, it was like take as much zinc as you can in a day.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I mean, vitamin C, as soon as I hear sick, my brain goes vitamin C, of course.
Oh
But I'm
yeah.
like, zinc? I didn't know. So I like that my notes right now say zinc sudses the runs.
Well, I also like the image of like if the soap gives you the runs, If you were
Yeah.
gonna have like a little, if you were nude and you were gonna have a little toot, like with a little bubble come out.
Just and float up. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna
Blowing
I'm
bubbles.
gonna Google. I can't believe this is what I'm Googling, but I'll let you know. Does soap give you the runs? I know it's not called the runs. Yes, according to the AI overview,
Please.
eating soap can cause diarrhea because soap can irritate your digestive tract and make it hard for your body to digest. So I don't know at what point in my life that information ever came out. But also, don't say eating soap like I'm sitting here gnawing on a bar of ivory. Like I'm not. Well, there we go. I don't hate being right, but I also
Well,
could have
and good
lived
news,
the
in
rest of
that
my
time,
life without knowing I was right about that.
in that time, I've also found an answer for you.
Oh, thank God.
Zinc is found in cells throughout the body. It is needed for the body's defensive immune system to properly work. It plays a
Hey,
role in cell division, cell growth, wound healing, and the breakdown of carbohydrates.
well, fuck, am I eating enough zinc?
Well, this also says
Probably
that
not.
it can help um a double-blind placebo-controlled study revealed that
Sure.
taking a 30 milligram supplement of zinc gluconate daily for 4 weeks led to a marked reduction in body weight, BMI, and waist circumference. I mean,
Right. That means zinc is getting written a second time in my notes.
not that I'm suggesting anybody needs to be doing that, but I was just surprised. Here is the other thing, though. There are
Yeah.
some disadvantages. You can end up with nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, abdominal cramps, diarrhea, and headaches. But that's with very high levels, I think.
Also, does the loss of appetite and the losing of weight kind of correlate? You know
Probably.
what I mean?
I will.
I'll just
I will.
I have to assume it's in like a because I do a multivitamin, so I have to assume zinc's in there.
Zinc would be in there.
Okay, then I can cross off zinc for the second time today.
Well, but I think that if you're ill or if you feel like you're
Oh,
getting
sure.
sick, then I would say add in additional zinc because I do think there is something to it. Now, again, I will also give a caveat. I'm not a medical professional, folks, so
Of
don't
course.
come for me. But take it with food, like with a meal. Because the one time that I had it with a snack, that's when that I definitely felt nausea and all of the above.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Uh oh God, because I mean I take my B12 at lunch.
Okay, Nana.
Well, that's only because after blood work, my doctor went, "Ooh, we need to get you taking some extra B12." And I was like, "Okay." And then he's like, "We'll circle back and do this again. And then if the numbers haven't increased, you're gonna have to start doing shots." And of course, in my mind, I was like, shots, 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 shots. And I was just like, I was 20-year-old me, very excited. And then I was like, no, Nana, he means like going to the doctor more often and getting injections. And I'm like, this sounds awful. So yeah, I've been religiously taking the B12 like he told me to. So we'll see how that circles back. And then I do a multivitamin uh, at dinner. But no, now I realize I switched out the multivitamin and just did a calcium because I got paranoid becoming an older woman. So I was like, just pump the calcium in her body.
I think you could take a multivitamin and calcium.
Can you? I see, here's the thing. I'm never good with math. Don't ever ask me to do vitamin math. Like the
Mm.
how many milligrams and then is it too much? Is it enough? If I need to, I'll take a multivitamin and a calcium, but I'm just like, is that too much calcium if you combine them? Because I
Can you
think there's
have too much calcium?
I don't know. I
Well,
don't
that's the next Google search.
here we go, Dr. AI. Um, but I mean, because I'm sure there's got to be B12 in the multivitamin, but he specifically wanted me to take just a B12 on its own.
Right. I guess you can take too much. Okay, it says Taking high doses of calcium, more than 1,500 milligrams a day, could lead to stomach pain and diarrhea. How much are you taking?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I'm
see,
gonna
this is what
write
we need to
down.
know.
I'm gonna write down 1,500 um for for calcium. This is again, if I could just cross off the runs on this paper, it would appear very like smart and like we had a really like serious science discussion. I guess the runs could be part of a serious science discussion.
I like that you're
Um,
managing to somehow pivot our overt Nana convo about supplements and how much calcium is too much. What does zinc do? I like that that's making, yeah, science. It's very, very, very kind of you to say that this is science and not at all just two women in their 40s desperately trying to cling to life.
I'm just trying to look, I'm just doing my best to exist, which is wild coming from the woman that has repeatedly, not just today, but in the last week, been like, ah, well, this is the odds that that asteroid's going to hit Earth in 2032. Eh.
Yeah.
Like I've
She's
just
really she's really come
accepted
to
it.
terms with it, and I think it's rattled you how much you've come to terms with it.
It has
Yeah.
because my husband pointed out to me earlier, or because I had kind of forgotten about it, in like 2009 ish, we went to the theater to see the movie 2012. Of course, because it's about, they thought the world was going to end in 2012, and it's this huge, beautiful disaster movie. And I love disaster movies. But while we're sitting there in that theater, I started getting like a little nervous, and I was like, this isn't real, right? Like it's not really going to get this level, right? And it got to the point where I was like in a full panic by the end of it. And as soon as like credits rolling, I turned to him and I went, "It won't really happen, right?" And he was like, "You're fine. It's fine." And I was panicking about it. And this is like, there's an asteroid that is large enough it will take out the Earth and the moon. The odds of it hitting both are pretty high.
How high?
Um, well, I say pretty high. The numbers now, I believe, are saying we have like a 1 in 43 chance that it will hit us, but that's only like 2%. But when
Ah,
they first mentioned this a week ago, it was less than 2%. It's like doubled since. So like after a week they're like, no, I think it's
no.
more. They're saying like 97% chance it won't hit us.
Well, what I like is that you're preparing for the worst.
Oh, I've immediately accepted it. I'm like, when do we start giving shit away? When do we stop paying taxes? When do we just start living feral? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the thing about an
Yeah.
asteroid is like, boom, it could have just happened, right? Like, bam,
Yeah.
it's over. Like, it
Yeah.
could happen at any moment. It's completely out of our control. And
Yes.
I think that there's perhaps for people who are, run anxious. Now, again, I'm medicated now, so my anxiety's better than it is typically.
Yeah.
But um I think that there's something about like that's a thing that I don't know, that's a thing where I could see myself going like there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do
Sure.
about it. There's no way to prepare because bam, that could have been
Oh,
it right
yeah.
there. Right? There's just no way to know.
Yeah.
So there is some sort of like I don't know what the right word is, but there is something that's like almost not calming, but it's like you like accepting that an asteroid could hit at any moment. I mean, then it's
Yeah.
just like, well, we have to constantly be living our best lives. Like
Of
eat the
course.
cheese, all these things, you
Of
know?
course. My only concern, and I can't believe I'm saying this is my only concern, but my only concern is I think at this point it because of something that size, it won't be just a sudden bam and it's over. It'll be the news will be talking about it, and it'll be like it's
Mm.
estimated it'll be here in 4 hours, and it'll be that lead up. And I think then I will mentally break and be and probably spend my last remaining hours freaking the fuck out. But for now, I've really just accepted it and gone, humans have had a great run.
May I remind you of the hit Don McKellar motion picture Last Night?
Yes.
starring
Yeah.
a effervescent Sandra Oh.
Oh, love
Um,
her.
I love that movie, and
Yeah.
it is this exact thing.
Yeah.
And it's basically like how would you spend the last few hours of life if you knew that it was coming for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I will also say that in my film studies class, we just ripped it off. We just ripped off that theme.
Oh, I mean, the amount of movies that have ripped off another movie. I mean, look in the 90s. How many? I mean, they're still doing it now, but the amount of times that the two big summer blockbusters were like the exact same movie, but like a little different. Cause I think it was like Independence Day and Armageddon came out at the same summer or something like that. And then it was like Dante's Peak and Volcano. And it's like, get bent. So it's just like they come up with
Yeah,
one
man.
idea and they're like, oh, this person's gonna make so much money off it. We should absolutely just copy the idea.
I appreciate you comparing my high school film studies class project
Yeah.
to major film production studios. That does make me feel better. You're right.
I mean, they were
Um,
both Canadian content.
there you go.
Yeah. I
There
also,
you go.
I don't think it was Armageddon and Independence Day. Maybe it was Armageddon and Deep Impact. Because that's the
Oh,
one
sure.
with Taya, right? Taya Leone and
I
Elijah
don't
Wood.
remember. That sounds right.
Again, I live for disaster movies. I'll watch the Rock in his San Andreas skyscraper, whatever the fuck he does. I don't care. The world's falling apart. Someone's gonna save people. Great.
Yeah.
But it's like, what would you do if it was like for sure, 24 hours? I have to believe in this day and age, we would get a lot further. Well, the government's not going to tell us. I was just, I was just going to say, well, they would know in advance. They're not going to tell us because they know the second they tell us, there's going to be panic and people are going to stop working the jobs that are necessary. And then we'll be like, fuck you, cops. And we'll be like doing whatever the hell we want. So they're going to hold off on telling us until the last possible minute. So we might only get 24 hours notice. And then it's like, and then what? The question the question is, am I going to spend that 24 hours, shove my children in a vehicle and be like, because planes aren't flying, because pilots are like, I'm not spending my last 24 hours working. So then it's like, well, the only way I can get to you is in a vehicle, but it won't, it's more than 24 hours. So I'm like, you're going to have to drive at me. I'm going to have to drive at you. And we're going to be like Justin Timberlake and Olivia, whose name is blanking in my brain, in that movie In Time, where you have the watches that that have like how much time you have left, and like she's running on like seconds, and they run towards each other, and they reach out to hold each other so that he can give her more time, and like it's there as they're reaching for each other, and the hands hold. Like I envision that's what it would be for us. Is
Yeah.
trying to being like, here it comes, and we're running out of the vehicles to try and get there.
I mean, the image that I had for some reason is the image in Point Break where they
Oh,
release Lori Petty and she
mhm.
runs in her like nightgown. For
Yeah,
some reason, I feel like I'm Lori Petty in this
of
scenario and I
course.
I don't know why. And yeah,
You've
and then
always
there's
had a
like,
Lori Petty vibe.
oh, God bless you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Um,
This is gonna drive me crazy. What Olivia am I thinking of?
of course, you know what I was going to offer? Newton
Wild.
John. Olivia Newton-John was going to be what I offered to the conversation, and I kept quiet because I was like, Nana, shut your mouth. You know that that's not the person. Olivia
Olivia
Wilde.
Newton-John. Olivia Wilde. Yeah. I do believe it was called In Time, but it was the whole thing of time was basically currency. And like if you've got like an hour, like it's ticking away, and if you don't get more time in the next bit at the end of that hour, you're dead.
God.
But there's just like this, I've only probably seen it maybe twice, but that scene has stuck in my mind of they're running out of time and they see each other and they run and they reach out so that he can try and give her a little more time. Yeah. I believe it was her birthday that day. Doesn't matter.
I feel like this has really made an impact on you.
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't remember loving it. I think it was just, I don't know, maybe I was so struck by the thought of time being a thing. Johnny
Right.
Galecki is good in that movie. I'll say
Hey,
that. The less Timberlake I consume, the better, though. And
look,
I stand by that.
remember when he got pulled over by that cop and he said this is going to be terrible for the tour? That feels
Yeah.
like a million years ago. And I thought that was
Yeah.
the wildest thing that could happen in the news cycle. Boy, oh boy. Buckle up, Ash.
Oh, well, I mean,
Buckle in.
how long did January last? That was 9
7
years.
years. Yeah.
Like it does not feel like we're only in the second month.
No, no, it doesn't. I also feel like time in general goes so quickly for me these days, but
Mm.
January 2025 did not.
Oh yeah. That dragged
Dragged.
forever. It went on forever.
Yeah.
Not unlike me trying to explain the full synopsis of the book series Fourth Wing to my husband, which he's not interested. He's not going to read them. He's not whatever. It's just I had asked him. Well, I guess I don't even think I asked him. I think he volunteered. The third book came out recently, and I start reading it, and I was like, God, the first two had big cliffhangers,
Mm.
and I haven't Googled to see like, is there a cliffhanger at the end of the third book? Should I be anticipating a fourth, which at least 2026, if we're lucky? So because nothing's been announced if there's a fourth or not. But I didn't want to Google because I didn't want it to spoil it for me. So he Googled for me to find out if there was anything, if there was some kind of like cliffhanger at the end. And he's like, I will tell you if there is, but I won't tell you what it is. And I went, okay. And then 2 weeks go by and I finished the book. And without him asking, which is pretty much how he gets all information from
Hmm.
me, I just went, hey, so you remember when you were looking up if there was a cliffhanger or not? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm going to tell you about it. He's like, okay. And he sat there and I tried to describe it in a very short amount of time, but it's also very difficult because there are like creatures that I don't know if you read about anywhere else. So I'm like, how do I describe that? And so I don't know. I really got into it. I,
I
I
love
think
it.
I think he was tired, but my point is, I mean, Rebecca Yaros, I have questions for you. That is the author of the Fourth
Okay,
Wing
I
series.
assumed that. Yeah.
Um, I mean, when I say questions, I really just have one question. She's never going to hear this. I just want to know when she sat down with the idea in her brain to write that first book, did she have it plotted out far enough that she's like, well, it's going to be at least 3+ books? Like, did she have the idea, like just a basic plot line? Because I'm fascinated to know.
Mm.
I'm just dying to know. Because
Listen,
it
maybe
just
she'll do some sort of
feels,
ask me anything online thing. You could ask her.
and that's the thing. I should Google because I have to believe someone's asked her this.
Mm.
I know she does a lot of like in person kind of things because she is incredibly popular right now. That third book went like number one immediately. And she's
Mm.
like the top selling author in some series or in some genre or whatever. Like,
You,
again, the second that there's like, if you say a fourth book, I'm pre ordering it immediately.
I love that.
I'm going to
Now,
make sure it's the special one so it has like dragons spray painted on the side because I'm a psychopath.
now is this in under your like your softcore pornography
I would
genre
say,
umbrella?
yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah. A dresser was broken during a sexual event in the first book.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Dresser,
I love that.
some sort of cabinet, some sort of piece of furniture, not a bed, was broken.
And are
Uh,
these humans or are these also in the fairy realm?
they are human.
Okay.
They have dragons that they like mentally bond with. It's a whole it's a whole thing. And I know you're like, dragons. Who cares about dragons? Christy, when she starts reading these books.
No, I listen, I get it. They don't
Yeah.
they don't do
Not with the
anything.
dragons.
Okay, I just wanted to be
The
sure.
dragon.
I just had to
No,
ask.
because the dragons, I think there's only one set in the books where the dragons are like, there's two that are like a pair.
Mm.
They're like lifelong bonded mates or whatever.
Oh, a bonded pair, sure.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's how you're going to sell me on something. They're bonded and they're mates. And because you know what that means? At some point in those books, he's going to be like, I will tear apart this world for you. And then I'm going to go, there it is. Because that's all I want.
Yeah.
He's going to risk himself to save her? Doesn't matter what series it is. I'm sold.
Right.
And I didn't think I'd give a shit about dragons, but I apparently do. My only complaint, and it's just the character names, no problem. We've got like, I don't know, there's like a Violet and Mira and Riddick and Bodhi, and those are easy. I can read those. The dragon names? Get out. I read what they say and I call them something else in my head because I can't read most of those words. A lot of the places that they visit, I also can't, like, I'm like, I don't know how to say that. So I do appreciate that the names of the characters are something I can read, but there's also so many characters. And then each of them has like a dragon or some sort of creature, and it's like,
Now, have
it's a
we
lot.
talked about like have you considered Game of Thrones?
Here's the thing. I don't know that I can. I
Okay.
I think we considered it once, and we were starting, I think, the first episode. I think this was before the show finished. And we were starting it, and we were like a couple minutes in, and we were like, we already hate it. We're like, this is so long already. And we were so bored. And I think we were just doing something else, and that we were like, we'll just we'll stop for now and come back to it. And we never went back to it. So I'm like, I can't decide if I'm like, I should just leave it where it is, or if I'm like, or am I going to get into it and it's going to just become my whole new personality?
Yeah, I mean, Mother Laurel loves it.
Of course. She's
Um
already sent me dragon book recommendations, by the way, because
God
I
bless.
mentioned dragons on a different episode ages ago. And she was like, just so you know, this is a series I like. I was like, understood. I'll get the first one and see how it goes.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I will say I did start watching Game of Thrones once for a guy that I dated very briefly.
Mm,
And personally found like the animal abuse, like there was like
mm.
some I didn't love the animal death, I guess I should say.
Oh,
And then
sure.
the R-ings,
Ah, yeah.
I didn't love that either.
Mm.
I never went back. But again, but it's not really my genre. That's never been my thing.
Well, see,
Um
and it's not, there is not one thing on the planet that's for everyone.
no.
So, yeah, there's going to
No.
be people who love it, and then there's going to be people who are like, pass,
I can see how
pass.
people loved it, and I'm not saying that
Sure.
I'm a no forever. Yeah, it was also because I was like, this dude was like, it was like the only thing he would watch. He'd seen the whole series so many times, and then it just was. I was like, why is this the only thing that you'll watch?
That is weird.
Yeah,
I get comfort shows,
totally.
but it's
But
like, that's the pick, huh?
that's a
Always.
pick over and over again, all the way through. You get finish it, you start over again. This is a very brief relationship, and yeah,
Hmm,
yeah. So I think that that was also part of it for me. I was just like,
of
I'm not going
course.
back to this thing that I was forced into by this Yahoo.
Well, it's just going to bring that all up again, and then you're just going to be like, what am I doing?
What am I doing?
So I get it. Look, I'm still like knee deep in The Sopranos. So I've still
Of
got to get
course.
through that. And then I'm doing Bridgerton at some point after that. And I might do Yellowstone. I don't know. I've just got too many and not enough time to consume it. So I'm just like, I don't think I have Game of Thrones time.
Meanwhile, what am I watching over here? Oh, I
Yeah.
watched a documentary I found on Amazon Prime the other day
Mm-hmm.
about people who are highly sensitive. So, we were
Hey.
both on our own viewing journeys. You know what I mean? You're watching classic award-winning TV series, and I'm watching very, very small documentaries about how some people are just more sensitive than others.
And
I
well,
say it
oh,
all the time.
I think that's true.
I say all the time I'm more sensitive than most. And again, I think it's a strength.
Yes.
I think it's a
Oh, and
strength.
look, let it be known. I mean, the Sopranos, because I'm not as concerned about the swearing, but the violence and the just massive amount of tits, I try and avoid watching if children are potentially going to walk in the room. So that tends to be my laundry folding show because the kids are at school when I'm doing that. So then I get an episode in twice a week. I will, if I have any time during the day, I will try and squeeze one in. But currently, um, making our way through The Cleaner, which is Greg Davies. It's a UK thing, and he's a crime scene cleaner. I find it enjoyable because I adore him, and I'm currently caught up on School Spirits, which is like
Oh,
a show they just dropped part of season 2, and now it's an every week I have to wait for the next one, like it's 1996. I should be so lucky to get to view it. So I'm not complaining I understand why they're doing it the way they're doing it, but it's well done. It's
well,
really well done.
if you need any updates about the season of Pop Star Academy on Netflix, Pop Star Academy Cat's Eye, then have no fear because I am here.
I, again, we have wildly different viewing
Yep.
pleasures. And that's the beautiful thing about being human.
Isn't it?
I
Isn't
think
it?
so.
Yes. I've also been watching some good things. I'm watching The Man Inside on Netflix. That's great with Ted Danson, friend of the podcast, Stephanie Beatriz.
Worse.
It's lovely. It's a beautiful watch. I really enjoy that. I as you know though, I like to have trash. I like to have trash on
Of
when
course.
I'm puttering and stuff like that, or true crime. True crime or trash. Um
True, true
true crime or
crime
tra-
or trash.
it's my favorite genres. And I will just say to that, we don't work with them. Why am I giving them this shout out? I'm doing it because it's for me. The next
Mhm.
season of Love is Blind comes out on fucking Valentine's Day, and I am ready.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Again, I mean, originally I did like the first probably 6 to 10 cycles of America's Next Top Model. Yeah. Oh, I
You want to
love,
be on top?
thank you so much. I
Yep.
loved the photo shoots.
Hmm.
Those were my favorite things. Um it's burned in my brain. I can't remember the girl's name. She was blonde, that's all I remember. It doesn't help. They were doing a photo shoot where everybody was a different sin,
Mm.
like the 7 deadly sins or whatever. And her specific photo shoot was she was like in a coffin and they were looking down on her and she had just found out that someone from back home died. And so
Mm.
there was like a big like, can she do this? Can she pull it off? And I think her sin was wrath or something, or rage or whatever it is. I remember there being red and I remember her being angry, and they were very kind about her photos. They were like, you pulled it off. Can't remember her, but I have that vivid memory in my mind of that specific cycle. Don't remember anything else about it. Um, oh God.
Listen, it's funny to like go back now and see how much was problematic on that show too, and like how they were just
Oh,
traumatizing girls with the haircuts and the makeovers and stuff. And
especially because they would make them like chop off all their hair,
Mhm.
and then like day later, you're going home.
Yeah.
And it's like, how about we secure who's here
It was
and we talk
100%. It
about it?
was also like some of the challenges were like, this challenge, you're all going to be dressed as another race. And it's like, I don't know that
Oh,
we were that far behind then. Like, I don't know why anyone thought like, let's put this person in blackface. Let's do it. Like
Oh,
it's wild.
there were some problems. I mean, so many, so many
So
problems.
many.
I
So many.
remember there was a girl that in one of her photo shoots, they were like, here's this picture. Doesn't it look great? Can we see it untouched, please? And then it changes to the other one, and you can see she's bent over and like has a normal teenage girl's stomach. And they were like, so what's happening there? You've just been eating nonstop since you've been here? And she's like, I don't know, I guess. And then it is burned in my brain. Tyra going like, well, one of my weight loss tips is I love ordering burgers at restaurants. I don't get the bun. And I just remember in that moment of like, so should I not be eating the bun? Fuck that. Burgers are my favorite thing. I'm gonna eat top to bottom that full bun. But it just that really stuck with me where she was like, you've got to watch it on the bread.
Oh,
I was like, are
it's
you watching her constantly to watch what she's eating? Why are you
well,
assuming?
oh yeah, great point. And also like that was just such an era of like the most disordered eating, the most like
Yeah.
again, I for young people now, I just really not to well, we started as nanas, we'll end this opening bit as nanas. I know I say this on the show a lot, but honestly, like if I wish I could impart to you like just how toxic that time was. Like we were
Yep.
constantly being shown images like the Jessica Simpson one is a great example where it's like she's ballooned and it was like she was just in high-waisted jeans. She's
Yeah.
so skinny. So
Yeah.
skinny. Well, Brittany
Oh.
Murphy in Clueless, where it was like she's the chubby one. It's like she was
Oh, I know.
115 pounds. Like, what are we talking about here? Like,
Yeah.
we were constantly being pushed and fed that it's like if you weren't extremely skinny then you were fat like
Yep.
there was only like acceptable and fat, those were the only two categories.
Yep.
And by the way, fat I'm not suggesting is a negative thing at all, it's more just in terms of like the mentality back then was that it was like you're a
Yep.
zero or you're fat, there's no sort of in between at all. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
You're either a size zero or you're a zero in real life. Like that's
Oh,
there it
wowzer.
is. Cause that was it. They at one point there were so many, I can't remember the exact performance, but Brittany did a performance and they were like, look how much she's let herself go. And I'm like, I think she looks fantastic. Why are
Oh,
we
but
talking about it?
yeah. Yeah. No, it's wild. It's wild. The woman also had two children. Not that that's
Yeah.
anything, but like she was smoking hot. Like
Yeah.
regardless of whether she'd had children. My point just is that
100%.
it's there's no justice and
No.
yeah, yeah, have some compassion for the elder millennials because we
Mhm.
survived we survived a time where it was like, you should probably throw away the bun, extremely thin woman.
Right? And have you seen
Gross.
the clip that's surfaced lately? That was Nicole Richie doing press for the show that she did with Paris. And the interviewer was like, and you're so much heavier than in on TV than you are in person. And she's like, uh-huh. And it was like, and how do you like manage that? And I was like, that's not something you ever ask.
Oh.
Like, what a horrific thing to say to a young girl of like, oof, you
Who
are
again?
so much heavier on TV than you are in person.
Well, and at her heaviest, quote unquote,
Yeah.
tiny,
Yes. Oh, it's
tiny.
insane.
It's insane. I could rage about this forever, but we don't have
Oh,
the
yeah.
time. Um, listen, we're discussing the Thomas Capano case.
Yeah.
I really paused on that name for a second.
You
As
put the
I'm,
right emphasis on the right syllable.
thank you very much. I'm
Of
also
course.
just deeply belching. What you drinking over there, by the way?
Oh, I just have a Slurpee.
Yeah, I've got a water. I have the remnants of a Diet Coke and a hot tea, which I'm going to replenish on the break because that's where we're at.
Ooh.
So many liquids. Again, concert coming up, days away. Got to keep these pipes ready to go. Thomas Capano, if you're not familiar, have no fear. I have something to read to you right here. In June 1996, Anne Marie Fahey seemed to disappear without a trace. Investigators were quick to point fingers at Thomas Capano, Anne Marie's older married lover. However, the public found it impossible to believe that a politically connected lawyer from an affluent family could be responsible for murder. What followed was one of the most sensational and dramatic trials in Delaware history. So, what happened to Anne Marie Fahey? Has she ever been found? And how did Thomas Capano go from a prominent lawyer to a legal pariah in less than 3 years? Christy Oxborrow investigates. Thank you for prominent lawyer to legal pariah. That was beautiful.
It might be my first usage of pariah on this show.
I think it I think it was. I don't remember
Yeah.
you ever using pariah, and that's a word that I love.
Yeah. And you know what? Nobody really encompasses it more than this man.
I love that.
Because he really went from I was gonna go with downfall, but
Mhm.
I've already used downfall. Not that I can't use it in a different synopsis, but I used downfall in one of my previous ones, and I was like, no, I need to zhuzh it up a bit, and pariah
That's how
is where
much
I
she thinks
chose.
about this, folks. Just know that. She doesn't want to reuse descriptive words.
No, it's insane. Well, now I might reuse pariah, well, only when necessary,
Of
just because
course.
it's such a good word. But yeah, I mean, today, because I'm already working on the next episode, um, I spent a solid 20 minutes because I wanted someone's age at a time something happened, and I could not find their age anywhere. And so I just had to, you just have to find the right thing to search. And I got there. Is the age necessary? No. The age was not even, it's not part of that story. It's not even needed. But I was like, I feel I have to have it. And I was like, and I will not
Yes,
stop until I have it.
I support that.
I high-fived myself when I found it. I was very, I also may have done a very like, that a girl, kind of thing, because that's just who I am. Anyway,
I love it.
so we're doing a disclaimer off the top of this. This episode will contain brief mentions of rape, suicide, and child death, so trigger warning for those who need it. Thomas Joseph Capano was born October 11th, 1949, into a prominent family in Wilmington, Delaware. His parents, Louis and Marguerite Capano, were married in 1943 and had 7 children, including Thomas, Louis Jr., Joseph, Marion, Jerry, and twins Mary and John. Sadly, the twins only survived for 4 hours.
Hmm.
In 1958, Louis and Marguerite built a real estate development and contracting company that was so successful that the Capano family has been credited with the rapid commercial development in Wilmington. Thomas attended Archmere Academy, a private Roman Catholic boys' high school, where he was student council president and captain of the football team. After graduation, he went to Boston College, graduating from its law school in 1973. Thomas would eventually become a state prosecutor, a city solicitor, and a public defender. He also served as legal counsel to former Delaware Governor Michael N. Castle and as an aide to then Governor Thomas Carper. By the early 90s, Thomas was a partner at the law firm Saul Ewing. He'd been married to his college sweetheart, Kathleen Ryan, since June 1972. They had 4 daughters, including Christy, Katie, Jenny, and Alex. In the spring of 1993, Thomas met Anne Marie Fahey. Anne Marie Sinead Fahey was born January 27th, 1966, in Wilmington. She was the youngest of 6, born to Robert and Kathleen Fahey. Sadly, in March 1975, when Anne Marie was just 9, her mother died from lung cancer. Her father, Robert, struggled to raise the kids on his own as he battled alcoholism. In March 1986, just 11 years after his wife's death, Robert died from leukemia. And if that wasn't enough for any kid to deal with, around the same time that he died, Anne Marie's longtime therapist was killed in a car accident.
Ah.
So, needless to say, Anne Marie had a very different upbringing from Thomas. So, Anne Marie got a job working as an aide to then Congressman Thomas Carper. And when Carper was elected governor, Anne Marie became his scheduling secretary. It was through her job with Carper that Anne Marie met Thomas Capano. At the time, Thomas was 43 Anne Marie was 27.
Here we go.
A few months after meeting, Thomas and Anne Marie started an affair. And while that may seem surprising, since at the time Thomas had been married for 21 years, it turns out that Thomas was known for having relationships outside of his marriage. I don't know the exact number. I've heard it was at least 8 affairs over the years. Salon.com reported that Thomas allegedly had nearly 20 affairs. I don't know how long the relationships lasted or how much his wife knew about them. I know that on more than one occasion, Thomas was seeing multiple mistresses at the same time. So, months into the relationship, Anne Marie wrote in her diary, quote, "How and why did I allow myself to fall in love with a married man? I know exactly why. He is kind, caring, responsive, loving, has a beautiful heart, extremely handsome, and was kind and gentle to me." She also mentioned that Thomas bought her expensive clothes and a TV. He offered to pay her rent and buy her a sports car. I don't know if he ever did either of those things, but the offer was made.
Mm.
In September 1995, Thomas left his wife and moved into a 3-story rental on Grant Avenue in the Highlands neighborhood of Wilmington. Anne Marie wasn't comfortable with the idea that Thomas was leaving his wife for her, so she tried to break things off. Around this same time, Anne Marie started a relationship with a man named Mike. So Thomas, allegedly, started stalking her. At one point, Anne Marie even told a security guard at work that Thomas had been stalking her. And whenever Anne Marie would try and break things off with Thomas, he would threaten to expose their relationship to Anne Marie's new boyfriend. However, Anne Marie believed that things with Thomas had finally ended. In a diary entry dated April 7th, 1996, Anne Marie wrote, quote, "I have finally brought closure to Tom Capano. What a controlling, manipulative, insecure, jealous maniac." Sadly, that would be Anne Marie's final entry.
Oof.
On June 27th, 1996, Thomas and Anne Marie had dinner at Restaurante Panorama in Philadelphia, which is about 32 miles northeast of Wilmington. Thomas ordered for both of them, allegedly without consulting Anne Marie, who a waitress described as forcing a smile and looking solemn. They left the restaurant around 9:30 p.m. 2 days later, Anne Marie didn't show up to a family dinner, which was unusual. Her boyfriend Mike was also meant to attend that dinner, and since Anne Marie wasn't there, Mike and Anne Marie's sister Kathleen went to Anne Marie's apartment on Washington Street. They said the apartment was a mess with groceries and shoeboxes all over the place, which was weird because Anne Marie was known as a bit of a neat freak. There were 12 unanswered messages on her answering machine, and Anne Marie's wallet and credit cards were there, but there was no sign of Anne Marie, so they reported her missing. 300 friends, family members, and colleagues gathered to help search for Anne Marie, but it seemed like she just vanished. Then President Bill Clinton told the Delaware governor that all federal resources were at his disposal to try and help locate Anne Marie. An investigative team was created with members from the FBI, the Wilmington Police Department, the IRS, and the ATF. I'm fascinated why they immediately brought the IRS in, but
Yeah.
they never said. At Anne Marie's apartment, they discovered 3 letters in the living room from Thomas Capano. They were very intimate in nature, which heavily suggested some sort of personal relationship. But investigators were surprised because Thomas was not only a well respected lawyer, but a family man, despite the fact that Thomas and his wife had separated in September 1995. Their divorce was finalized in December 1998. But then investigators found Anne Marie's diary, which included explicit details of their affair. Investigators spoke with Thomas on June 30th and asked him about Anne Marie. Thomas admitted to having an affair with her, But he said they were no longer intimate and they hadn't had sex in 6 months. He said they were just friends and he had seen her on June 27th. He said they had dinner together, they went to his place, and then he drove her home. He said when he got there, he inspected her faulty air conditioner and left around 10 p.m. He said they parted on good terms and he stopped at a gas station and headed home. Thomas told investigators that he assumed Anne Marie was just somewhere with her friends because she was unpredictable and airheaded. I know it's early for me to start calling things out, but I just immediately have a couple of thoughts. One, calling Anne Marie unpredictable and airheaded sounds like he's trying to make investigators think Anne Marie disappearing wasn't unusual or concerning, even though literally everybody else in her life said that it was. And two, so what he's saying is they had dinner at a restaurant, went to Thomas's house for an undetermined amount of time, then to Anne Marie's house, where Thomas supposedly looked at her air conditioner. He said he left around 10. Well, according to the staff, Thomas and Anne Marie left the restaurant around 9:30. The restaurant, which is on North Front Street in Philadelphia, is about 31 miles from Thomas's house on Grant Avenue in Wilmington. Depending on their speed, that would take about 43 minutes to drive, putting them at Thomas's house around 10:15. He claims they went to his place, then hers, then he stopped at a gas station and was home around 10. How did all of that happen in the span of half an hour? Especially when, according to Google Maps, Anne Marie's apartment on Washington Street was closer to I-95, which is what they would have used to return from Philadelphia. And I can only say that word so many times without saying, "Go Flyers." So, also, that gas station that Thomas allegedly stopped at after going to her house, he said he left around 10 p.m. and then went to a gas station. Well, that gas station closes at 9:30. So you
Interesting.
couldn't have gone there. So what I'm saying is Thomas's timeline doesn't fit. So I'm already suspicious. And kudos to the investigators because they were suspicious as well. Then on July 2nd, Anne Marie's hairdresser, Lisa, contacted police to say that Anne Marie had told her she was afraid of Thomas and afraid he would hurt her. Anne Marie told Lisa about a time when she tried to end the relationship and Thomas grabbed her neck while they were in the car, uh, to which Anne Marie responded by jumping out of the vehicle.
Whoa.
So at this point, investigators truly believed that Thomas was responsible for Anne Marie's disappearance, but to charge him, they would need evidence and ideally a weapon or a body. So investigators start interviewing anyone with a connection to Thomas and even went through his phone and financial records. During an interview with Thomas's housekeeper, Ruth, they asked if there was anything different about the house. She said nothing had changed in the house. So they let it go. But then on July 26th, so about a month after Anne Marie's disappearance, police noticed an interesting charge on Thomas's credit card. On June 29th, just 2 days after she was last seen, Thomas made a purchase at a place called Wallpaper Warehouse. Since he was living in a rental, investigators were pretty certain Thomas wasn't putting up wallpaper, so they call the store and they discover that Wallpaper Warehouse also sold rugs and carpet.
Mm.
So the investigators re-interviewed Ruth, Thomas's housekeeper, this time specifically asking her about like rugs and carpeting in the house. And Ruth said when she went into the house on July 22nd, she noticed that there was a new love seat or sofa, and that the carpet had been replaced, even though she said it was in good condition the last time she saw it. But what happened to the old carpet and the old love seat? Well, according to a project manager at a construction site, his boss requested he empty a dumpster at the site on July 1st, even though the bin was half empty and not scheduled to be emptied yet. Who is the project manager's boss? Thomas's brother, Louis Capano.
Here we go.
Investigators searched 2 local landfills for the carpet and love seat, but came up empty. According to that same credit card statement, on June 30th, Thomas went to a drugstore called Happy Harry's and purchased a bottle of Carbona stain remover. What types of stains does it remove? Well, according to Carbona, the specific stain remover purchased was meant for blood, dairy, and ice cream, which is a wild combination to me. I checked online multiple times because when you look at it, it looks like something from a Saturday Night Live commercial. It just doesn't look real. Um, I guess for some reason, I was surprised because in all my years of doing laundry, I don't think I've ever seen a dairy stain. I'm not saying it happens. I just don't think I've personally seen it. But the combination of blood,
Is
dairy,
that
and ice
code?
cream,
Is dairy code for
I don't, what are we, I don't
like
know what that is.
like jizz?
Oh, I don't, I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. Because wouldn't they just put like bodily fluids?
Would they?
I mean, they put a big ice cream cone on the picture of the bottle.
Okay, I'm reading into this too much. Also, it's being sold at Happy Harry's, so maybe I should just give it a rest.
It's also, again, circling back to Nana. You're like, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. Nana doesn't know. Nana doesn't.
Uh,
Nana doesn't. No. I can't get into that. I can't get into that. Scotty doesn't know one of the greatest songs of all time, and it's from a
of
movie.
course.
Um, so on July 29th, Anne Marie's psychologist Michelle told police that Thomas had allegedly been stalking Anne Marie and that he would show up uninvited to her apartment and call her as many as 20 times a day. Michelle said Anne Marie feared Thomas, so in her professional opinion, it would be unlikely that Anne Marie would have gone to Thomas's house willingly. Because again, remember, after dinner, he claims they stopped at his house for who knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
After obtaining a search warrant, investigators spent 11 hours searching Thomas's house and his vehicle. At the house, they found 3 drops of blood, one on a baseboard, one on a radiator, and one on the door to the laundry room. A DNA analysis, said that it was a match to Anne Marie Fahey.
Okay.
And while this led investigators to believe that Anne Marie was likely dead, they still couldn't arrest Thomas at this point because they knew they would have a better chance of a conviction if they found Anne Marie's body, but there was absolutely no indication of where that could be. So investigators looked through Thomas's interviews and noticed that he said on June 28th, the day after Anne Marie was last seen, Thomas spent the day in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, with his youngest brother, Jerry. And then they look closer at Jerry, and wouldn't you know, he owns a boat. And just days after Anne Marie's disappearance, Jerry randomly sold that boat.
Oh boy.
When investigators spoke to the people who bought the boat, they said it was sold without an anchor. I think it's safe to call that suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
So police continue to stick with Jerry when they discover he has a history of substance use. So in October 1997, they arranged an undercover sting operation, which leads them to getting a search warrant for Jerry's house. Inside, they find cocaine, marijuana, and a total of 21 firearms. Since cocaine and one of the guns were found in Jerry's son's room, child services were called, and out of fear of losing custody and to avoid any federal charges, Jerry immediately agreed to cooperate with police regarding Anne Marie's disappearance.
Well, well.
Jerry told authorities that in early 1996, Thomas told Jerry he was being extorted and that he needed to borrow $8,000. That would be equivalent to like almost 16,000 in 2025. Thomas later admitted to borrowing the money, but refused to ever say what it was for, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Soon after borrowing the money, Thomas asked Jerry to get him a gun, claiming that the person extorting him was threatening his daughters, and he would kill anyone who even considered going near his kids. Jerry said he did not get Thomas a gun, but on at 6 a.m. on June 28th, Jerry found Thomas sitting outside his house in a vehicle. Jerry simply said to him, "Did you do it?" allegedly referring to their previous conversation about killing the person trying to extort him. Thomas responded, "Yes, I need your help." Jerry said he got into the vehicle. They drove to Thomas's house, where inside the garage was a large igloo cooler. Jerry helped load the cooler into the vehicle, and they drove back to Stone Harbor, where they got on Jerry's boat, Summer Wind. Jerry said they drove about 60 to 70 miles off the New Jersey coast uh, to a place nicknamed Mako Alley. Apparently, it was one of Jerry's favorite spots for shark fishing. Yeah, I said shark fishing, and yeah, I'm gonna gloss over it because while shark fishing is illegal in many places, apparently it is legal in New Jersey. There are a lot of specific rules. We don't have time for a shark fishing side quest or side note in my case, so I'm moving on. So they get the boat 60 to 70 miles out. At this point, the water's about 200 feet deep. Thomas then allegedly puts the cooler into the water, but the cooler just kind of floats. They thought it was going to sink, but it didn't. So Jerry used the 12 gauge shotgun, which he kept on board for that shark fishing that I said I wasn't getting into, and Jerry shoots at the cooler, but nothing happens. Also, I know I'm not an expert, but I think if you're using a gun while fishing, you're fishing wrong. Again, I don't have time. So Jerry shoots the cooler, but it just keeps floating. So Thomas pulls the cooler back on board. Jerry noted blood coming out of the hole in the cooler. He allegedly told Thomas, "This is really wrong." Jerry then turned his back as Thomas pulled something out of the cooler, which Jerry believed was a body. Thomas attached an anchor to the body before vomiting over the side of the boat. Then, with Jerry's back turned, Thomas tossed the body into the water. Jerry said he turned just in time to see a human foot and part of a calf sinking into the water. Thomas then allegedly removed the lid from the cooler and then just tossed the lid and the cooler into the ocean. Investigators later found a receipt proving that Thomas had purchased a cooler in April 1996, 2 months before Anne Marie's disappearance. Jerry claims he started sobbing and repeatedly said, "What have you done?" Jerry then helped Thomas put a blood-stained love seat in a dumpster at a construction site, and days later, he sold the boat. But Jerry wasn't the only Capano brother that Thomas allegedly got involved. Shortly after allegedly disposing of Anne Marie's body, Thomas contacted his brother Louis Jr., who was in charge of the Capano family construction and real estate development company, and asked Louis Jr. to empty a dumpster at a very specific construction site. When investigators spoke with Louis Jr., he admitted he had asked one of his project managers to empty a specific dumpster on July 1st, even though the dumpster wasn't full or scheduled to be emptied yet. Louis Jr. also claimed that when the dumpster was emptied, he saw a love seat with a basketball sized blood stain on it. Louis Jr. also admitted that in the fall of 1996, he confronted Jerry about Anne Marie's disappearance, and Jerry admitted that he was there when Thomas dumped the body. Louis Jr. said while he had no direct knowledge about what happened to Anne Marie, he did purposely mislead authorities early in the investigation because he believed Thomas was innocent. To avoid federal charges, both Louis Jr. and Jerry agreed to testify against their brother.
Wow.
On November 12, 1997, police received an anonymous tip that Thomas Capano was seen putting suitcases into his vehicle. Fearing that he was trying to flee, investigators had Thomas followed and they eventually pulled him over and he was officially arrested. Investigators informed Thomas that two of his brothers had agreed to testify against him. They even played Thomas small clips from his brother's tape recorded interviews. I mean, just to give him a little teaser of what they had. Then the investigators pulled out a cooler, suggesting that it was the one from the ocean. They didn't outright say that it was, but they didn't outright say that it wasn't. They heavily implied that it was the right cooler. In reality, they had purchased the same brand of cooler, same brand, same size. They took off the lid and put a bullet hole through it to try and make it look authentic. Thomas admitted to buying a cooler in April 1996. He said he bought it because it was going to be a birthday present for his brother, Jerry. Clearly, investigators were hoping that Thomas would realize he was caught. So, after showing Thomas this potential evidence, they offered him a plea deal. Because at this point, they didn't have a body and they knew a conviction would be so much easier if they had a body. So I think they felt the only way Anne Marie would get any justice would be to convince Thomas to take a deal. They offered to charge Thomas with the lesser crime of federal kidnapping resulting in death. But Thomas pleading guilty to that would have meant prison for life. However, it would take the death penalty off the table. But claiming to be innocent and likely believing he would get away with it, Thomas rejected the deal. He was then officially charged with first-degree murder. In June 1998, a judge officially declared Anne Marie Fahey dead. She was just 30 years old at the time of her death. Thomas Capano's trial started October 1998. Now, one of the first people they brought out at that trial was a psychiatrist named Neil S. Kay. Neil apparently had an appointment with Anne Marie just hours before her dinner with Thomas. And Neil testified that Anne Marie feared ending the relationship because Thomas had a lot of rage and anger. And I understand why the prosecution put him on the stand. To have a medical professional state that the defendant made the victim fear for her life because she wanted out of the relationship, it's a great way to set up motive and make the defendant look like a viable suspect. What else did psychiatrist Neil say on the stand? I have no idea, because people were so busy looking at his outfit that they did not focus on a single thing this man said. Now, I know what you're thinking. What piece of clothing could have been ridiculous enough to make people not pay attention during a murder trial? The answer: a wooden hat.
No, Neil. A woman is dead.
No,
Neil.
not the time,
Leave the
Neil.
fashion at home. A woman is dead.
Yeah, look, Jimmy Buffett, now's not the time.
That's
Yeah,
insane.
it was a fedora style hat made from wood.
No.
And it became the only thing that people wanted to talk about. And then after the trial, Neil bought the courtroom sketches of himself from the trial
Ugh.
and had them framed and hung in his office. So I guess in the end, wearing a wooden hat wasn't the weirdest decision he made when it came to this trial. There was just no way I could talk about this trial without mentioning that damn hat. And yes, there is a photo of the hat in the case file at True Crime and Cocktails on Instagram and Facebook. So the defense admitted that while, yes, there was a romantic relationship between Thomas and Anne Marie at one point, the relationship had long since ended, long before Anne Marie's death, and they were just simply friends. I just find it hard to believe that Anne Marie would ever willingly be friends with the man, especially when multiple people have said she feared him. But, what do I know? The defense then stated, and this is a direct quote from the trial: Anne Marie Fahey died as a result of an outrageous, horrible, tragic accident. Then, in a move no one saw coming, They openly admitted that, yes, Thomas Capano did dump Anne Marie's body into the Atlantic Ocean.
What?
However, they said he wasn't responsible for her death. He just disposed of her body.
Oh, guys,
So who
what you
was?
doing?
Yeah. So who was responsible for her death? Um, well, according to Thomas's defense team, the shooter was Thomas's other mistress, Deborah McIntyre.
Oh, here we go.
Deborah McIntyre was a 47-year-old private school administrator who was married to a law professor. And apparently, Deborah had been having an affair with Thomas since the early 80s. Investigators realized the couple's relationship after going through phone records and finding numerous calls to and from Deborah, including a call on the night of Anne Marie's disappearance and another call the following morning. According to records, Deborah purchased a .22 caliber Beretta pistol in May 1996, just 6 weeks before Anne Marie's death. And for whatever reason, during her initial interview, Deborah never mentioned a gun. So once police figured out that a gun was purchased, they interviewed Deborah a second time in January 1998, about 2 months after Thomas's arrest. And just like they did to Thomas with the fake cooler, investigators took a gun that was the same make and model, put it in a sealed evidence bag, showed her the gun along with her receipt for purchasing a similar gun, and then said, quote, "If Tom Capano's fingerprints are on this gun, would you be able to explain that?" They never outright said it was the gun. They never said they had the fingerprints. They very heavily implied it. Deborah probably assumed it was the real gun, and she said, well, he may have seen the gun, and she claimed she threw it away, and so he may have just had access to it once it was in the garbage, which is fascinating. Now, since investigators didn't have the real gun, they couldn't charge Deborah with anything. Even if they had the real gun, they still couldn't charge her because there's no body, so we don't know the exact cause of death. But days after her interview, Deborah hired a lawyer who contacted investigators and told them Deborah would cooperate and testify against Thomas in exchange for immunity. Everybody's turning on Thomas.
Everybody.
Deborah testified in court that Thomas had asked her to buy a gun because he needed protection from an extortionist. She said after buying the gun, she gave it to Thomas and never saw it again. She also added that Thomas told her he went for a boat ride with his brother Jerry on June 28th. But as I mentioned moments ago, the defense team was trying to claim that Deborah not only bought the gun, but she also kept it herself and shot Anne Marie. Thomas Capano takes the stand against the advice of his counsel because either this man thought he was smarter than everyone else or he truly believed he could charm the jury. Maybe it was a bit of both. He admitted he initially lied to police about his relationship with Anne Marie. Uh, he had claimed they were only friends at the time of her death, but he testified, oh no, we were still sleeping together, including like weeks leading up to her death. So why in that moment would you be like, oh no, we boned for sure? Like, I just don't. What are we doing? That's almost as ridiculous as a wooden hat. Thomas then tried to deny his affair with Deborah, even though it's been 15 years that that's been going on. He claims he wouldn't have chosen Deborah as his mistress because she was the daughter-in-law of one of the founding members of the law firm where he worked at the time, but also because, according to Thomas, Deborah was, quote, not the most attractive female amongst their friends.
Okay.
Can
Come on.
you imagine sleeping with a man for 15 years, putting your marriage on the line, and he publicly says he's obviously not sleeping with you because he knew more attractive women than you? Fucking brutal.
Brutal.
I
No wonder she turned on him and was like, I'll testify against him. Like, no wonder all these people did. His own brothers? Like, come on.
I think it's huge and says so much that so many people were willing to turn on him. I think it says a lot about what he was like. So Thomas testified that on the night of June 27th, he took Anne Marie to dinner just as friends. Then they went back to his place to watch ER. I double checked. I found a TV guide online from June 1996. ER was on that night at 10 p.m. It would have been a rerun because the season finale aired on May 16th. Do I believe they watched it? No. But even in a rerun, ER was good television. So Thomas claims that they're watching ER when Deborah calls and asks if she can come over. Thomas said he had company and hung up on her. Thomas then claims the next thing he knew, Deborah had shown up at the house and was going ballistic. Thomas claims Deborah was talking about taking her own life, and then she pulled out a gun. Anne Marie, uncomfortable in the moment, stood to leave. Thomas tried to grab Deborah's arm, and in that moment, the gun accidentally went off, hitting Anne Marie. Thomas then testified, quote, "That's when I basically made the wrong decision, a cowardly decision to get rid of the body." He said he put Anne Marie's body in a 162-quart igloo cooler. For reference, the cooler would have been about 21 inches high, 19 inches wide, and 44 inches long. And Anne Marie was 5'10" or 70 inches tall.
How did that work?
Thomas said that he wrapped the body in a cotton blanket and pushed her knees into a fetal position. He was adamant that he did not break any bones. Then Deborah allegedly helped carry the cooler out to the garage.
Oh my God.
Thomas said,
no wonder she asked for immunity.
Thomas said he enlisted his brother Jerry's help the following day, and they transferred the cooler to Jerry's boat. His story is then exactly the same as Jerry, where they put the cooler in the water, but it didn't sink, so Jerry shot at it. When it still didn't sink, Thomas removed the body, tied an anchor to it, and then dumped it in the water. Thomas said he did this to protect Deborah, which is interesting because he started his whole testimony claiming he wasn't having an affair with Deborah because she wasn't hot enough. So why would you protect her?
Great point.
Why would that happen? Now, Thomas can deny the relationship all he wants, but while he was in prison, he sent Deborah some pretty steamy letters describing his favorite sexual positions that they used to do together and the ones he'd like to do with her once he's released. Yeah. In the letters, Deborah told Thomas that she would try and help him out, and she blamed him for putting her in the position in the first place because she was embarrassed about having to testify about their love life. She then wrote, quote, "You really owe me big after this is over." Owe her for what? Not complaining when you publicly accused her of murder? Deborah testified that she absolutely did not shoot Anne Marie, and she was nowhere near Thomas's house on the night of Anne Marie's murder. But one of Deborah's neighbors testified, well, they saw Anne Marie that night stumbling out of her car crying before running into the house. The neighbor doubled down and said it was so easy to see Deborah, even though it was late at night, because they had brand new floodlights in the neighborhood. But it turns out those floodlights weren't installed until 6 months after Anne Marie's death. So either the neighbor saw her on a different day or the neighbor is lying about seeing her at all.
Right.
And while Thomas had been sending Deborah those spicy letters, they quickly stopped when he discovered Deborah had agreed to cooperate with the prosecution. Because if Deborah admitted to giving Thomas the gun, well, then that's going to help show that Anne Marie's murder was premeditated. So Deborah was a problem, and Thomas needed that problem to go away. First, he tried to have her threatened. He was hoping that he would scare her off from testifying. A convicted burglar named Nicholas Perillo came forward to claim that Thomas had approached him about having Deborah's house burglarized. Nicholas claimed that Thomas gave him the code to Deborah's security system and drew a layout of Deborah's home, adding notes of things like there was a specific floor to ceiling mirror in the bedroom that he insisted had to be shattered. His exact words were absolutely required. Because apparently
Dramatic.
basically, I didn't write this in the notes, but basically she hid porn and sex toys behind it. And he knew that she hid that there. And so he wanted her to know he knew. He wanted her to know he was involved in this whole thing.
Right.
And, in like a threatening kind of way. But instead of organizing that crime, Nicholas went to the police. And since, Nicholas didn't do it, Thomas allegedly went a step further and offered convicted drug dealer Wilfredo Rosa, aka Tito, $100,000 to arrange the murder of Deborah McIntyre. And while they're at it, Jerry Capano. Yes, he allegedly took a hit out on his own brother.
Wow.
Soon after this revelation, Thomas was charged with 3 counts of criminal solicitation.
Yeah.
There were even rumors that Thomas's ex-wife, Kathleen, put money in the prison commissary for both of those inmates, but I could not confirm that because, of course, I have no way of checking prison commissaries. And the whole time that Thomas is plotting to intimidate and potentially murder Deborah, he's also sending letters to another mistress, a legal secretary named Susan, who ended up becoming so fearful of the attention that Thomas's case was getting that she not only broke up with him, she moved to the Virgin Islands to escape
Jesus.
the publicity. When asked about Thomas, Susan simply said, "He requires attention." Yeah.
Yeah. No guff.
Yeah. And look, there are a lot of juicy sex details sprinkled throughout this case, like how a Delaware deputy attorney general had to testify that he had sex with Deborah while Thomas watched them through a window. Like he specifically said that it was a threesome, but Thomas only watched.
Okay.
Kind of thing. And while it's Blanche's first thought to spill the tea about the juicy stuff, I don't want anyone thinking in any way that I'm kink shaming. From the best I can tell, all of his exploits were with consenting adults. So as long as everyone is on board and of age, have a great time. Not my business. At this point, I'm more interested, well, first of all, in that wooden hat. And in the piece of shit man who can't handle a woman breaking up with him. Allegedly. Tale as old as time.
Isn't it? It is on this show anyway.
Yeah. Not a single one of those characters turned into a hat.
Certainly not a wooden one.
Nobody would. No room to breathe. So Thomas's brothers, Louis Jr. and Jerry, both testified against him, with Louis Jr. talking about helping to get rid of that blood-stained love seat, and Jerry talking about helping Thomas dispose of the body. Turns out, the real cooler was actually found by some fishermen on July 4th, about 100 miles from where Thomas had tossed it in the water. The men who found it, just bless their hearts, thought free cooler. So they patched up the hole and then just used it to hold the stuff they caught, which I can't really think about. They didn't know the truth. So bless them for, reduce, reuse, recycle. In November 1997, one of the men heard a story on the news about Anne Marie and the fact that it involved a cooler and that particular area, and they turned it over to the FBI 16 months after it was allegedly put in the water. They used that thing for almost 16 months.
God.
I mean, it's an amazing ad for that cooler that it's like, it survived a gunshot. We're still using it.
Takes a licking, keeps on ticking.
Yeah. Also, didn't have a lid, but somehow I'd also love to know what they filled the hole with, because whatever it was, it worked. So Jerry testifies that he begged Thomas to turn himself in because being involved in this was going to ruin Jerry's life. Thomas said he was there for Jerry when Jerry needed protection, so it was time for Jerry to return the favor. And now I want to know what Thomas did to protect Jerry. Was it legal? Did it involve the fact that Thomas was a prominent lawyer? We're never going to know. Did he get a charge taken off the books so we don't know? I mean, it could be anything. So the 12-week trial came to an end in January 1999. The main problem for the jury was whether Anne Marie's body would fit in the cooler. And I find that fascinating because putting her body in the cooler was the only thing Thomas admitted to in court. The charge wasn't, did he dispose of the body? The charge was, did he murder her? Because he openly admitted to disposing of her body, which is also fascinating that he just didn't try and claim ignorance on everything. Well, according to one juror, at the time when deliberations started, they were about 50-50 on whether he was guilty. They had a similar sized cooler brought in, and one of the jurors climbed in to see if she could fit. She later said she is horribly traumatized from having done that, because once they all realized she could fit in the cooler, they all just automatically agreed, well, Thomas is guilty. So after 3 days of deliberations, Thomas Capano was found guilty of first-degree murder, which is an automatic life sentence in the state of Delaware. The jury also voted 10-2 that Thomas would be executed. And weeks later, after the trial ended, Thomas was officially given the death penalty. The judge stated, quote, "The defendant fully expected to get away with it, and if not for his arrogant and controlling nature, he may have succeeded. He is a ruthless murderer." Thomas was meant to receive a lethal injection, but in January 2006, the Delaware Supreme Court overturned his death sentence, and Thomas Capano was given a life sentence instead. In April 1998, months before that trial was set to begin, one of the members of Thomas's defense team announced he was quitting the case. Joseph Hurley, who'd been friends with Thomas for like 8 years, said he had to remove himself from the case. When asked why, he said he was going to take the reason to his grave, which is insane to hear a lawyer say. Years later, Hurley said, quote, "I think I was probably facing the reality that he was, in fact, guilty of premeditated murder." So by saying he was going to take it to his grave makes me feel like Hurley really thought Thomas was genuinely going to be acquitted, is what that sounds like to me. Now I know we are all anxious to know more about the Capano family because it doesn't stop. So the father, Louis Sr., died from a heart attack in 1980 at the age of 57. His wife, Marguerite, died in February 2013 at the age of 89. After her death, there were so many legal battles between her sons about ownership of certain things, and honestly, rich people fighting over money is boring, and we don't have the time. Of the 5 children, almost nothing has been said about their daughter Marion. She and her husband did testify during the trial to defend Thomas and to attack the credibility of Louis Jr. and Jerry. Again, attack them over what? Having the same story as Thomas? He admitted to disposing of the
Yeah,
body.
great point.
After their father's death, Louis Jr. took over running the family real estate development company, Capano Management. In the late 80s, Louis Jr. made some illegal campaign contributions. He participated in an FBI sting that led to the conviction of a local councilman. Fascinated to know more about that. In the 90s, Lewis Jr. was caught bribing a politician in a zoning case. In 2006, Lewis Jr. decided he wanted some positive press for the Capano family name. So he offered to donate $1 million to Archmere Academy, the private Roman Catholic high school that the Capano boys all attended. The hope was to have a new student center built and named after the family. Not surprising, the public was outraged because it's 2006. They haven't forgotten that Thomas Capano was convicted just 7 years prior. The school stated that they accepted the donation in the Catholic tradition of forgiveness.
Uh,
From the best I can tell, yeah, they took the money, but did not use the Capano name on any buildings. Lewis Jr. then offered $1 million to St. Edmund's Academy, a private all-boys Catholic elementary school, with the hope that the school would name their new gymnasium after Lewis Capano Sr. The school agreed, but because of that decision, 2 members of the school board resigned.
oh my God.
To this day, there is a Lewis J. Capano Sr. Fieldhouse at St. Edmund's Academy. As of this record, Lewis Jr.'s son, Lewis III, is the current CEO and owner of Capano Management.
Hmm.
Jerry Capano, the brother who was with Thomas when he disposed of Anne Marie's body, um, he had made a deal with investigators. When they raided his home in 1997, they found multiple drugs and more than 20 guns. In exchange for his testimony against Thomas, Jerry was prohibited from owning guns. In March 2007, Jerry was accused of sexually assaulting a woman in his home. Police raided the home to seize sheets and bed linens, but while they were there, they noticed 3 rifles, 3 shotgun shells, some gunpowder, gun accessories, and bows and arrows. And since his previous deal meant he couldn't own any weapons, Jerry was indicted on 9 felony counts. But he took another deal. I'm fascinated as to why they gave him one, but he took another deal where he would plead guilty to possession of illegal weapons and to owning a muzzle loader, and then they just dropped the other 8 weapons charges. Part of the deal meant that the prosecutors couldn't seek more than 6 months in prison. Oh, and no assault charge was ever filed because the authorities decided the woman's statement had too many inconsistencies for them.
Wonderful.
The one Capano brother that I never really mentioned in this was Joseph, simply because he wasn't involved in Thomas's downfall. Yeah, I found a place to put downfall, I guess.
Nice.
So there was no point in bringing him up, honestly, until now. But if we're going to talk Capano, I suppose we have to mention them all. In October 1991, Joseph was accused of kidnapping and raping a 27-year-old woman who used to babysit his children.
Good Lord.
Joseph was 39 at the time. He denied the charge, saying he didn't rape her. They were having an affair. He avoided jail time after prosecutors let him plead guilty to misdemeanor assault, unlawful sexual contact, and criminal mischief. Joseph died in August 2015 from a heart attack. He was 62. And finally, the main Capano that I've been yelling about all episode, Thomas. He was suspended from practicing law in November 1997 and then officially disbarred in November 2001. Following his arrest, Thomas spent the rest of his life in jail. He was found dead in his prison cell in September 2011. His death was determined to be a heart attack. Thomas was 61. His obituary mentions his impressive law career, his impeccable taste in music, and his love for his daughters. Surprisingly, it mentioned nothing about his murder conviction, and while some may think I'm being harsh on him, I would like to point out that according to an FBI report, months after Thomas's father died in 1980, Thomas asked a legal secretary out on a date. She said no, which was her right. In response, Thomas asked a man to break the woman's legs because Wilmington was his town and no woman was allowed to turn him down. Thankfully, the man he asked was actually an FBI informant, so the woman was not harmed. Instead, at Thomas's request, the informant allegedly made harassing phone calls to the woman until she moved out of town. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that this man killed Anne Marie simply because she broke up with him. It's the chilling level of forethought that really disturbs me. On April 7th, Anne Marie wrote in her diary, "I've finally brought closure to Tom Capano." She thought that was it. She thought she was free. 13 days later, Thomas went and bought that cooler that he would later use to hide her body. And then just 2 months after that, she was dead. And despite the clear planning, it seems like Thomas really thought he was going to get away with it all. A quote from the prosecutor named Ferris Wharton: "Thomas had done a lot of bad things that nobody ever called him into account for, and he thought he could control things. He thought the investigation would be confined to the Wilmington police looking for a missing person, which they were never going to find. Now I'd like to know what other bad things he did that no one ever called him out on." As of this record, the remains of Anne Marie Fahey have never been found. Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
What a wild ride. Let's take a
Yeah.
quick break, hit the can, grab a drink, and we'll be back with our thoughts and feelings about the Thomas Capano case on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. Three. One, two, three. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing Thomas Capano. Capano. Let's call the whole thing off.
Hey.
This is a wild ride. My God. And of
Yeah.
course, yes, did we end up raging out against this man? Of course we did. Of course we did. I have lots of thoughts. Um, One thing, what is with this town that they're living in? The stores are called things like Wallpaper Warehouse and Happy Harry's Pharmacy. Like, just the level of innocence
Oh,
feels
it's
almost
charming.
creepy.
It's
Yeah.
charming. I did hear that it wasn't relevant to the story, but I did hear that Happy Harry's got bought out by somebody. I can't remember, like a Walgreens or somebody like that.
Oh, sure.
And
Well,
everyone was
happens to
quite
the
sad
best of
about it.
them.
Yeah.
Okay. The one thing that I find really interesting is that it felt like Jerry, when he was like, okay, you found all my guns, you found cocaine in my son's room, I'll testify or I'll work with you against my brother at that point.
Sure.
It really felt like he was telling the story that it's like, well, he was being extorted and he was going to kill the person who was extorting him. And I didn't watch any of it when it was happening on the boat. I was turned the other way. I call bullshit. I think this man was probably, I'm not saying he was involved in the murder, but like, I turned away. All I saw was a leg and a foot entering the water. Get out.
Yeah.
Because it made it sound like he was trying to imply that he didn't think it was Anne Marie, that it was whoever this person who was allegedly extorting him. Like, it felt like that was the
Sure.
way he was trying to lead the police. And it's like, sir, get out of here. If you're willing to take your brother out on a boat with a body in a cooler, you're not turning away and like, let me give you your privacy with the person that you murdered. Like, get out of here.
Oh,
Also,
my whole thing was, so you needed Deborah's help to get the cooler to the garage, and then you needed Jerry's help to get the cooler into the car and onto the boat, but you put the cooler in the water by yourself and pulled it out of the water by yourself and then threw a body with an anchor on it in the water by yourself?
100%. This is basically what I was about to say, because that's when I wrote down for the first time, how big was she? Like, how big was this body? And like, a woman who's 5'10". I mean, even if she's extremely slim, I mean, that's tall for a woman. That's like a
Sure.
decent sized person, right? So like, there's no way. And again, it's the expression dead weight is one for a reason, because it's not
Yep.
like you're picking up a 150 pound, I'm completely speculating by the way, but like, 150 pound, 160 pound person who is alive, that person then you're working together when you pick that person up, right? But if that person
Yeah,
is deceased and it's 150, 160 pounds of dead weight, good luck. You're gonna need a
yes,
second person. No way. Unless this
100%.
guy was a worked out, but I'm gonna guess he likely didn't.
No,
Um, yeah, I just feel like it's like Jerry was trying to make it seem like he was like less involved than he actually was, and I just call bullshit on that.
100%.
I love that he rejected the deal, the federal kidnapping resulting in death. He's like, nah, I'm innocent. Let's go. Dude. And then your lawyers were like, let's just lead with the fact that you did dump the body. Like, what are they thinking? And the next note I wrote down, skipping ahead for a second, there was a moment that I wrote down. Where is it? Oh, yeah. I just wrote down in quotes, Thomas testified. There's a mistake. Like, what were they thinking?
Oh, I don't think they had a say. I have a feeling.
Right.
I kind of think it's like how they say doctors are the worst patients. I bet lawyers are
Yes.
probably the worst to have, because again, I think he was so arrogant that he was like, I'm obviously going to get away with this. But it's wild to me for them to come out the gate with like, okay, we get it. He dumped the body. And it's like, here's the thing. Jerry, I don't know if they'd be able to say it or not in court, but Jerry got caught with drugs in his and a gun in his son's bedroom. I don't know how old the son was, but can't you use that to be like Jerry's lying? There was no body in a cooler. I don't know what he's talking
Right.
about. Like, do we trust him as a witness? Like, I don't know why they didn't do that and be like, I don't know what cooler he's talking about.
There is no body to this day.
Yeah,
The idea that his defense team and him, yeah, I mean, he would have had to sign off on it. The idea that they would say, like, yeah, let's admit that she's dead and you dumped the body. I
it's
mean, look,
wild,
we're not lawyers out here, obviously, folks,
obviously.
but we've done this show for long enough and we consume enough true crime and court stuff that I think I'm going to say, here's my opinion. That's insane. That is an insane choice that there was no way was going to work.
Like, do you think he was just so arrogant that he's like, I can absolutely charm them?
He must have. He must have been. But again, what I would offer is that if you don't have a body, why are you providing them with the knowledge there's a body? Now, by the way, again, I'm not suggesting that any of what I'm saying is ethical, but
Sure.
we see a lot of different defense strategies. And this to me, I just think it's like 101. Like if there we no body,
Sure.
no crime. This is a common theme we know here. So
Yeah.
if they haven't found the body, to me, you don't admit that there's a body. And I
Yeah.
understand that they were probably trying to get ahead of it, but to your point, it's like, yeah, why didn't they just try to attack Jerry's credibility? Because
It's
then who
also yeah, it's also wild to be like, well, she's the one. It was Deborah who shot her, and I was protecting her. We weren't sleeping together. I was just protecting her because of nothing, because we're buddies. And it's like,
but
why are
she
you?
also she
Yeah.
also said that she wasn't there and they couldn't corroborate the neighbor's story. So for all we know, Deborah wasn't even there. For all we know, Deborah wasn't involved at all. It
Yeah,
seems as though she did buy the gun for him. It feels like she did
she
admit
did.
that, right?
Yes.
So okay. Okay, that makes sense then that's how he got the gun, but there's no proof that he got the gun from her the night that Anne Marie was killed. He could have had that gun for whatever amount of time.
She could have bought it and dropped it off at his house after buying
Same
it.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, to me, yeah, it's just wild that the defense would be like, "No, no, no. Let's admit that she's dead and you dumped the body." That it's again when there's the only person that's saying that that happened was Jerry,
Yeah.
who to your point has done some bad things.
Yeah.
So easy to poke credibility in. Anyway, I love that they said they watched ER and you're like, I did confirm it, but it was a repeat. That's the Christy Oxborrow I know and love. Thank you for giving
Yeah.
me the measurements of the cooler because I
I,
became
I
unraveled partway
yeah,
through that I was like, how big was this cooler? And now I know that you're saying that a woman on the jury got in there. I find it hard to believe. Like I understand that I guess it
sure.
is physically possible, but that does not seem big enough to me.
The woman on the jury, I believe, said she was 5'8".
I mean, even still, but I also there I just don't know. Like, look, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of how he did this, and I don't want to think about how he could have manipulated that body. But the fact that he was like, and I didn't break any of her bones to do it, says to me he's probably broke her bones to do it. Like, why would you offer that information?
To say I didn't break any of her bones immediately makes me think he's trying to say he didn't do anything to harm her in any way.
Right.
He gave her a beautiful passing. Like he gave her a beautiful burial. He didn't harm her. He didn't do anything. Didn't break the bones. And it's like, I mean, I
The
don't
other
know how
thing
much we'd believe that.
the other thing I find interesting. Now, this is a forensics question that neither of us I know will have the answer to, but
Of course.
if we are to believe Jerry shot the cooler with her body in it, which
Hmm.
is also, by the way, sick. Can I just say,
Yes,
oh, it's
please.
not sinking. Let's shoot this thing with a body in it. Like, good
Yeah.
God, you guys. You're
Yeah.
already dumping the body in an area that is known for sharks, which is not a coincidence, in my opinion. Clearly, they're like, if we dump the body here, that's like the like feed it to the pigs situation that
Of
we've
course.
heard before in media and whatnot. Like, okay, we get it. You're putting the body in a place where it's going to get eaten. What benefit does it have to keep it in the cooler? If anything, it would have been smarter from the beginning just to dump the body
Yeah.
with something attached to it to weigh it down. But here's the thing for me. So he says he shoots the cooler and then blood comes out. Here's a couple reasons why that doesn't work for me. We do know the forensics we do know from doing this show as
Sure.
long as we have is that when a person is dead, like once your heart stops pumping, then the blood stops flowing, right? So
Correct.
if this person is dead, I'm not suggesting that she wasn't obviously covered in her own blood. I'm not suggesting that that would not have necessarily been the case. But it just the way it sounded was that he was suggesting that it's like blood poured out or whatever. And it's like,
Yes.
well, the only way that that would happen is if she was still alive in there.
Great point. It's almost
So
like so either she was still alive, which I don't believe because it would have been the next day, and God, I hope that wasn't true. The other option is he added that as like a thing to be like, see, that's how I know there was a body in there because I didn't look, but I saw blood coming out.
totally could have been that too. I guess the only other thing that I don't want to offer, but that I'm offering is because we don't have a body and we likely, if again, this was a shark infested area and I'm certain we probably won't ever find that body tragically. It feels like those sharks probably did what they're known to do. Um, Not that they're known to eat people, that is a misnomer, but you know what I'm saying. Um, we're also assuming that all of this is true from two unreliable narrators.
Yeah,
For all we know, he could have kept her alive for some amount of time. I know that there was amount of blood loss because the couch had blood on it.
sure.
We know that blood was found in his apartment of hers.
Yeah,
But the truth is we don't know if she was dead at that time.
it's true.
We don't know what the nature of this crime really was. Right? Like we know that there was a cooler because it
Yeah,
was eventually found. Okay. So we know that that all makes that all checks out, but we don't know. We don't know what part of her body she was shot in. If she was shot in the leg or shot in the arm, she could
sure.
have been bleeding out very slowly.
Very true.
Right? And I only offer that, you'll love this, because I just am like, I can't get over that we're just trusting Jerry. Like, I just
Yeah.
can't get over that it's like this man who has been, who was later also charged with a sexual assault and, or accused of, and then also 9 weapons felonies. Like,
Mhm.
that's the guy that we're like, oh, yeah, his story for sure. That's true. Everything he's saying that is true. Why would the defense offer that the body was dead already? Oh, yes, he did dump her body. Isn't it possible that she wasn't dead yet and they knew she wasn't dead yet?
And that's why they shot the cooler.
And that's why they shot the cooler. Exactly. And that because he couldn't follow through on it all the way and he needed his brother to finish the job.
More than possible.
And again, the lawyers would likely go, ooh, we don't want to like get into the additional counts of what it would mean to have transported her dying and right? Like it's
Yep.
possible that it's like it was a lesser thing to be like, all right, let's just say she was already dead and then you. We don't know what happened on that boat. We
Well,
don't we have
it's
no idea what happened on that boat. They could have done God knows what to that poor woman on that boat. There's no the only people that know is the two of them. And I don't trust either of them.
it's also more than possible that they buried her somewhere and gave
100%.
gave the story of, we already told you, bodies in the water. Because at that point, they're not going to be able to go find the body.
No.
And so if they're not going to bother at that point, once they're like, oh, we admit we put her in the ocean, then the investigators are going to be like, well, I guess there's no point looking then.
And this is my point about well, I didn't make this point before. This is my point now about this defense because
Mm-hmm.
it's so outlandish. It doesn't make any sense. I'm like, then what is it covering? What is the worst thing that that defense method is covering? Because it doesn't make sense that they would be like, let's tell them that she was dead. We'll just say that it wasn't you who killed her.
Right?
What's the truth? How much worse could it possibly be? Because guess what? I think the sky's the limit.
Oh, I can't even begin to imagine. The idea that she might have still been alive. I mean,
Again, I know that I'm completely pulling that out of nowhere, but to
it's
me, I
possible.
don't think that's crazy. And it doesn't and you raise a great point too that it's like he could have shot it and no blood came out. Like it may have been that he was just embellishing the story.
Sure.
100% true. 100% true. But taking that even without that detail, I stand by that there is no proof that that woman was at we know that that woman was dead going like again, we are only trusting the two unreliable narrators to be telling the truth. So to me, it's like I just think it could have been, and the tragedy is we'll never know. We'll never know the full truth because even if they were able to find any of her remains at this point, it's decades and decades. Like it's impossible, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, and again, that's what just doesn't add up to me. They knew there was probably no way that body would ever turn up. So why? Why would they offer that? Unless, to your point again, it's like, yes, she's in the ocean by where the sharks are. You'll never find it. I don't know. It feels like to me again something else is at play. Because again, why is he offering money? Why is he offering so much money to like kill Deborah, kill my brother Jerry? What's
Yeah.
up? What else is going on, bud? Like doesn't it feel like it's like there's another layer to this that just why is it so important to you to kill Jerry? Because he also didn't put a hit out on his brother Lewis. Who Lewis Jr.,
True.
who also testified against him. So what is it that Jerry knows? Because all Lewis
Great
knows is
point.
that he disposed of a bloody love seat. That's all that Lewis knows, and that's all that Lewis testified. Now
It's
Lewis
true.
may know more, but he didn't testify to anything else, obviously. Um, why would you want Jerry dead? You've already your story essentially corroborates with Jerry's story what we know during the case or during the
Yeah.
trial, right? Their
Yeah.
stories were basically the same. So why would you try to have him killed? What does he know? What
Yeah.
actually went on there? There has to be some other reason. There has to be
Oh,
some other layer. It does not make sense.
there's got to be something.
There's got to be something. And Deborah even, it's like she admitted that she bought you the gun. Okay. I guess there's more stakes in having her taken out of the equation because she's saying that she supplied the murder weapon.
Sure.
That makes a little bit more sense. The Jerry one again, I'm like, why would you why would you try to have him killed when you told the same story he did?
Well, it makes no sense.
Yeah, something else is up. If you ask me, something else is up. The fact again that Lewis Jr. was like, we need to rebrand, we need to get some positive press for our last name. Get out of here. Go take a nap. Go out to some
Yeah.
country and buy some jams. Enough. Enough.
Yeah.
That's stupid. And the fact that, again, I love that both the schools were like, yes, we'll take the money. Only one did the naming, but still, I mean, unbelievable. And then it's like, my last thought I have to say is this other brother, Joseph, also kidnapped and raped a woman. We know
Mhm.
that Jerry was accused of raping a woman. We know that Thomas was stalking and murdered Anne Marie, and God knows what to whoever else. What's up with this family, guys? What you doing?
Yeah. It just seems like a lot in one family.
Right?
Yeah. Especially the boys of the family
What's that
specifically.
about? What's
I
that
don't
about?
know. I don't
Something
know.
happened. Something's up. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Um, I also love that it took him years of being in prison to finally get disbarred as a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Multiple years.
Yeah.
Feels like, I don't know, you go to jail for murder, I'd say maybe
Maybe
then
that's the automatic
your
conviction.
ethics
Oh, he's
maybe.
been convicted? Disbarred.
I think that
Yeah.
maybe that's a point A to point B. That feels like one small line for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it just takes a while to get there.
Maybe,
Paperwork.
maybe.
I don't know.
Anyway, also, does it surprise me that Joseph, was charged and pled down, and Jerry was charged and took a deal, and the sexual assault charges were dropped? Like, it feels like this is just, again, like an affluent
Hmm.
white family, white men come from family money and then are prominent in the community. And so, to your point,
Yeah.
tale as old as time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
I,
it's insane top to bottom.
I mean, I was riveted. I honestly, like, the court stuff in this just really fascinates me. And again, I stand by that. I think something else happened on that boat. We'll never know. There's no way to know, but something else happened. There's no there's got to be something else, another
Oh
layer
yeah.
to it.
There has to be.
There has to be. There's just it doesn't make sense otherwise on any level. Christy Oxborrow, fantastic work as always. Truly, this was a wild ride, and I was riveted. Kudos to you. 12 out of 10 as always.
I never get tired of you grading me.
I know. That's why I bring it back up.
I
And
know.
we thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this wild ride. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. If you'd like some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well. And if you're a last-minute ticket buyer, go to laurenash.band to get tickets to my February 12th concert tomorrow, the day after this airs. February 11th is the concert, February 12th. Would love to see you there. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Kenley Matheson.
Ooh, don't know anything about this and cannot wait. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Good night to whoever makes wooden hats.
Yeah. Good night to the wooden hat people.